With every passing day, I was more and more convinced somebody in the resources office didn't like me. Intensely. Why? I wanted to ask. Have they sent one human, one Zatari, and one Svantarad to an unexplored cold planet rated 3 out of 6 on the DEATHWORLD scale? Myself, I understood. Human, sturdy, with a wide range of knowledge, a botanist. There was a thick, taiga-like forest we were meant to study. It was logical. But a Zatari? Zeph reached barely up to my knee if they straightened upon their last pair of limbs. An excellent climber and mechanic, but crucially, from a species used to jungle climates. While they could go out in the cold, if bundled up properly, it was not ideal. Very much not. They looked very cute, all bundled up in a jacket, magenta fur sticking out in tufts, but I didn't like that they were meant to work in the cold, and neither did they. Alas, Zeph the Zentari was a very grouchy, but ultimately somewhat understandable, choice. Very good mechanic, very mouthy, not taking up space at all and barely needing to eat things that couldn't be found on planet. But it was Neymar that constantly made me anxious. He was a Svantarad, just a few centimeters shorter than me, and he could have passed for a human at first glance, if only for his white hair, big ears, and slightly reflective skin. He was from a desert planet. Desert. His comfortable range of temperature was barely reachable within the rudimentary base we had, and he was constantly going around either bundled up in all of his clothes or just plainly shivering. He was an excellent soil and cartography expert, with some first aid training, but come on, who sent him there? I had to write out a chart to always have either me or Zeph with him if he went out, because it would take one ill-timed cold spike and he would be dead in a matter of minutes. So I was pretty sure I had royally pissed off someone, in resources, and my crewmates also did. Somebody was trying to get us killed, I was nearly sure of it. But today was a bad day, even by our standards. The short summer was coming to an end, and we still had to stay here for the next few months, to collect data before a shuttle would come for us. Problem 1, the temperatures were already around 0, and would only drop from here. Problem 2, the drone we used to collect data got stuck, and we had to get it free. Problem 3, it had started snowing. While for me it would just be annoying, and Zeph could go help me. Granted, we made good time. This was deadly weather for Neymar. He was stuck in the base for the foreseeable future. When we managed to get a good read on where exactly the drone got stuck, problem 4 arose. We didn't have a rover with that range. We would need to walk the last bit. We packed the best one, got on it with Zeph, rode as close as possible, and started the hike. Another issue became glaringly apparent in just a few steps, and I felt rather stupid for not having thought of it earlier. Zeph was tiny. Zeph was not evolved to walk long distances. Zeph was from an arboreal species. They could not keep up with me, especially in this weather. This counted as problem 5 for today. I glanced down at them, hissing and spitting acid as they scuttled, on all 8 feet trying to not be left behind. Zeph? How dignified are you feeling today? I sighed. Not at all. They puffed in affront when a snowflake landed on their nose, bearing their first set of teeth. Good. I nodded and picked them up by the back of their jacket with one hand. Hang on to my backpack. They blinked at me with huge black eyes, feet kicking at the air uselessly. You are already carrying all the equipment, they protested, unusually placid. I grimaced. The cold had to be even worse than I thought. Normally, they would be spitting mad for this. You weigh what? 2 kilos with all the stuff you carry? Please, Zeph, be reasonable. My backpack is barely 6 kilos, and in training we carried 30 across terrain. Jump on, glorified lemur. At this, they hissed, but skittered up my arm and onto the backpack. Thank you, Fermi, they muttered, curling. Up on top. Yes, the cold definitely got them bad. They said thank you. No problem, little guy. I shrugged, starting the walk again. It took 2 hours to get to the area where we had the signal, dodging the local flora that was decidedly more deadly than the fauna. After this, we somehow managed to locate the drone quickly, get it unsnarled from the branches of a particularly vicious carnivorous tree, and return to the rover. I hurried back as fast as I could because, well, Zeph was not all right. They stopped snarking after the first hour of our march and started stuttering in their movements just as we finished setting the drone back on. As they curled up on the back of the rover, I grit my teeth and sped towards our base. Yeah, I wanted them in there ASAP, bundled up in all the blankets with Neymar. Neymar was warm. Zeph also should be warm and not out in below zero temperatures. When we got to the base, it was nearly nightfall, a very worried crewmate waiting for our return. The moment we stepped inside and closed the airlock, we were beset by him, fussing over us. I let myself relax slightly. Problems 2 through 5 were resolved. Neymar immediately bundled Zeph up in a blanket, one of his own, giving them warm broth from some sort of bug that I didn't really enjoy the taste of. Then he looked at me, eyebrows wrinkling, and also had me bundled up in his blankets, fussing like a mother hen. "Here, you are cold too," he murmured, pressing a cup of tea in my hands. "Thank you, Neymar." "How was the day?" I asked lightly, gesturing at him to sit next to me under the blanket. Zeph was already sleeping in their hammock above the heat vents, but I could feel that while the inside of the base was warm enough for me, it was not warm enough for Neymar. Also, Neymar loved touch, even more than I did. What I had read about the Svantarad painted them as a very, very communal species, and I was nearly sure somebody broke some law to send Neymar here alone. So, hugging him as often as I could, it was a nice reprieve from most aliens who seemed to be allergic to touch. He squeaked, a sound that I came to associate with him being nervous, but sat beside me, letting me wrap my arm around his shoulders, covering him with the blanket, too. It was one of his blankets anyway, smelling faintly of sand. His ears moved a few times, a soft tremble running through his back, and then he relaxed into the touch, melting like wax under a blowtorch. "It was very quiet," he said, a soft rumble behind his words. I smiled widely. He was purring. I knew he could, but he had never done that this fast. I bet it was. "You know we have a nuclear generator for this base, right? You could have turned up the heat while we were gone, seriously." I held him closer, making his purr kick up in volume. He blinked at me, looking kind of lost. "Ah, well, maybe one day you will." "We found a second people-eater," I informed him. "Oh no, where?" he huffed, pursing his lips in displeasure. "The last one nearly ate Zeph, and Neymar held a grudge. Beyond rover range, I put it on the map." I shrugged, sipping at the tea. He furrowed his nose, baying his upper teeth in a snarl-hiss combination. I wondered if I had picked up the hissing instinct from any of them yet. I easily slipped into this weird mishmash of emoting when working long-term jobs, and to this day, I found myself curling my fingers sometimes to signal attentiveness after having worked with Calthar for a few months. Yes, indeed. "What were you up to?" "Got that soil placement map updated. Read the book you gave me. Nothing big." He leaned fully against my side, evidently sleepy. Cold always made him a bit sluggish, and if he found a source of warmth, be it me, a hot water bottle, or the vents, he would take a nap there if he could. Zeph was exempt from this list because they were too small to fall asleep on, but I had caught them letting themselves be carried like a baby by Neymar when he was restless. I was mildly suspicious that whatever the sexes looked like in Svantarad, Neymar was of the one that kept the young safe. And I had the even nastier suspicion why the documentation I had found on his species was either heavily redacted or nearly non-existent, because all I could find was that they were communal and lived in the desert. So yes, I was nearly sure that somebody in resources was trying to get us killed. Soon enough, Neymar drifted off on my shoulder, and I didn't have the heart to wake him up. His hair was very, very fluffy. I ran my fingers through it, combing it into a semblance of order. It reflected the yellow light of the nighttime lights of the base, looking like it was gold. In truth, it was transparent, even if the light painted it different colors. Zeph was an obnoxious magenta and lime combination, looking kind of like a horrendous cleaning feather duster with 8 limbs, impossible to miss anywhere. But Neymar could reflect light well enough to blend in anywhere, nearly invisible. It made me worry badly. Soon enough, there would be snow outside, and his coloring. White and cream would make him blend in. If he would fall into a snowdrift and we didn't notice immediately, we wouldn't find him until the snow thawed. I could hear the laughs of the management about human pack-bonding tendencies. But to be honest, if they didn't want me to start, caring about my crewmates, they shouldn't have stuck us together on a planet that could kill them both in minutes with the weather alone. They were mine now, and resources could stick it. I would keep them both alive and in good shape. Or so. Help me! I hugged Neymar closer, hissing at the air. Then I realized what I had just done. Well. This answered my question about body language, at least. I felt grateful now for past me taking the time and effort to find out if the wood of the plants around us burned, and gathering piles of neatly cut-up logs under the flimsy excuse of gathering samples. Officially, that had been what I was doing, gathering samples of the local flora. Unofficially, I had read the brief we got about the conditions on the planet, looked up the temperature range of my crew members, looked up the weather rating of the base, and promptly began cursing. They had left me to it, not interfering, and once or twice Neymar helped me carry the wood into the shed I made to store it, but they didn't ask after I had stressed the officially part of this task. Plausible deniability is important after all. What I had found out doing this was that the sap of the plants was edible and very, very tasty. Well, tasty for me and Zeph. Neymar had tasted it and promptly began sputtering. So now as the temperature was slowly but steadily dropping below what the nuclear generator could handle and not reroute the additional heat used to warm our living quarters, I seized one of the last sunny days and went to chuck some more logs from the woods to the base. And, oh, sunny it was. Both stars shining bright and melting all of the snow that had fallen a few days before into a sludge that made the ground muddy. The last kiss of summer, one could say. I had told Zeph before leaving that they maybe should make a fireplace inside our base today, while it was still warm enough they could get around without 4 fluffy jackets. Neymar, while not exactly best at chopping wood, wanted to tag along, and who was I to stop him? An additional pair of hands was always useful. We felled 4 young trees of the kind that burned best and started dragging the logs back to the base. Honestly, Neymar looked adorable in his padded jacket and hat dragging a tree thick as his thigh. He was considerably less strong than me, but he was faster, with the reflexes worthy of a cat. I didn't have those reflexes, sadly, so when I slipped in the mud because I was staring at my friend and not at the road, I didn't catch myself in time, landing gracelessly in the yellow mud. The log I was carrying thumped me in the back, making the air escape me with a muffled gasp for good measure. Ow! I mumbled into the ground, feeling excessively stupid. Fucker. To think about it, the ground was quite comfy. Wet and cold, but comfy. "Fare me!" Neymar shouted, voice strangled, and before I could find it in myself to gather my sorry ass out of the mud, he was already kneeling next to me, medical scanner in hand and ears pinned back in fright. "A shark, no," he murmured, panicked, hands flitting over me. "Nim? What?" I managed, a bit dumbfounded. "I'm fine, just tripped." I sat up, wincing at the mud coating my whole front. He whined, a high distressed and scared noise, and the next second I had an armful of spooked Sphanterod clinging to me. "Hey, what is going on? I'm fine, shh." I hugged him back awkwardly, trying not to get the mud all over him. He needed a long moment to calm down, and when he pulled back, he averted his eyes quickly, but I caught sight of his irises narrowed in embarrassment. "I'm sorry, Fermi. I overreacted," he mumbled, gathering the med scanner that was blinking, at us with a green light. Yeah, even technology agreed I was fine. Good. Well, could you explain why? Blinking at him curiously, I stood up, trying in vain to shake the mud out of my clothes, and offered him a hand. He took it hesitantly, and I lifted him out of the puddle he was sitting in. He was so light that I wouldn't be surprised if his species had hollow bones, to be honest. I didn't have much hope he would explain his reasoning, because it looked like some instinctive reaction, and those were species-specific. Neymar did not talk about his species, at all. But to my great amazement, he replied after a moment, lifting his log back. It's dangerous for most Sphanterod to be hit in the back. I forgot for a second that you are human. Sorry. Huh? I replied eloquently. Well, most our internal organs are near the back. And there is. There are a lot of receptors there. Too. At least for Sar and Sarl. A Sar have scales, he carried on. It was fascinating, and I listened closely, not minding the unfamiliar terms. I'm most familiar with Sarl, and for me it would be very unpleasant, he finished lamely. I tilted my head. Are you a Sarl? Forgive me, but I'm unfamiliar with the terms you used here. Neymar missed a step, barely catching himself, before he too landed in the mud. Yes, I am. It's, hard to explain in Galactic Common. Reproductive categories of my species? More or less, it's a bit more complicated. Oh, that's good to know. Humans have only two, more or less. Ah, yes, I have read about that. Neymar smiled. I think I would be roughly the equivalent of what in GC would be called a carrier. I looked at him. Nice, I concluded after a long moment. Any nastiness from that front? He snarled at the air. Sometimes. I hope it won't happen when we are on the mission. Shouldn't, but who knows. We continued for a moment in silence, only the squelch of mud under our boots and some local fauna chittering in the trees breaking the quiet. There was one thing that I wanted to ask him regarding his biology, because I had noticed some worrying signs. I frowned, thinking of a tactful way of bringing this up. Does your species nest or, sleep in piles? I finally said it plainly, biting my lip. I hoped no for his sake. His ears slowly dropped as he stared at me, stopping in his walk. Yes, he mumbled out hesitantly. I winced. You are slowly getting touch-starved, aren't you? You got a lot more clingy lately. He only blinked at me with impossibly wide eyes and dropped ears, the epitome of miserable and anxious. I'm going to find the one in resources that wants to fuck us over and strangle them with their own intestine. I sighed, adjusting the log I was dragging. Well, for all it's worth, feel free to climb into my sleeping pod at any time, honestly. The offer was met with a squeak and Neymar turning to face away from me in embarrassment. Well, it was out there. Now if he took it up, it was his thing. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it. He was warm and soft. Well, soft where he wasn't bony, but still. Zeph was also nice to hold, but they were grouchy. Their species didn't really do physical contact, and they only begrudgingly let themselves be carried sometimes to get somewhere quickly. We managed to get back to base without further incident, piling the logs near the entrance for easy access even if it snowed. The cut-up firewood was in the shed that opened to the inside too, so that was handy, but better be prepared. Zeph waved us over, and we went to see the fruit of their labor. It was quite a nice fireplace just next to our sleeping pods with well-made ventilation and a grate to make food on. It looked as if they pulled a design out of the human part of the G-net. It was quite amusing. All right, I think we are all set on surviving this winter, I exclaimed, taking off my muddy shoes. It will be fine. In hindsight, that had been the moment I jinxed us for the next few weeks. It was the middle of the night when I woke up to Neymar shaking my shoulder gently, a snarl on his face as he watched the northern wall of our base, the one we had reinforced just hours before. It was the one looking onto the forest. It was creaking ominously, a low growling coming from behind it. I woke up all at once, nearly falling out of the sleeping niche in the wall, Neymar yelping as he tried to catch me flailing. Sorry, I managed, rightening myself to stand. Neymar was still in day clothes because he was part nocturnal, and Zeph was already all puffed up and hissing at whatever their console shoved them was behind the wall, so it was only me in my pajamas. Felt slightly underdressed for the moment. The wall creaked again, a loud thump coming from behind it. Local fauna! Neymar hissed, teeth bared in a snarl, and stalked over to the closet where we kept emergency supplies. Zeph? I asked, cursing like a sailor when my leg got caught in the pants awkwardly. Zeph made some highly disconcerted sounds, voice pitched high with either fear or worry, scurrying down from his hammock onto my shoulders. Look. They only passed. Me the console, and I blinked at the image. The fuck is this? I managed after a moment, staring incredulously. At first glance, it looked like an overgrown mouse, and when I said overgrown, I meant half the height of our base overgrown. It Was. I averted my eyes, repressing a shudder that ran down my back. Yeah, not looking at that thing longer than necessary. Nimar snarled a curse in his native language, looking back at us with slitted irises and eyes wide, reflecting the yellow light eerily. We don't have anything to scare it off with. Best we can do is this. He held up an air gun of the kind used for tagging animals. It wouldn't even make a sound. Zeph chittered nervously into my ear. Try shouting. Fermi, you can get really loud. I made a face. I would rather have a plan B in case this doesn't work. Fire could work, but Nimar came up to us to look at the display and promptly threw himself back, backing up to the wall. Nope. No. Fuck no, he muttered to himself. Despite the situation, I smiled at him, picking up my curses. It was nice to see that I wasn't the only one to mimic my companions. Zeph moved their whiskers. You two and your fascination with fire, they grumbled. But yes, it can work. Suddenly, an idea struck me. It was probably a bad idea, but it would be much more efficient than just waving some sticks on fire. Zeph, give me your welding tool. The hand held one. Nimar, where do we keep the bug sprays? Or alcoholic-based sanitizer, the sprayable one? Fermi, what are you? Nimar blinked at me as Zeph jumped off in search of the requested device, but handed me the pressurized spray cans. I only shook my head, gesturing to the display, on which the thing that was nuzzling out base thumped irritatedly. Don't worry. I did that back on Earth with my brother. I assured him in lieu of explaining, shrugging on a jacket and finding some gloves. Plan Inferno is a go. If something goes wrong, shoot that thing. Maybe it will do something. Under no circumstances. You two go outside the base, understood? It's... Quickly checking the display, I paused mid-step. It's 248 Kelvin outside. You will die. Oh fuck, it's frosty. I realized, and quickly got myself a hat. Zeph returned with the welding tool, handing it to me. The wall creaked again, little. Cracks showing on the paint of the inner side, and a muffled grunt could be heard. Please be flammable, I muttered, turning the tool on and spraying a bit of the aerosol over the tiny flame. It burst into a cloud of fire, nearly singeing off. My eyebrows. Yes! I cheered and ran out of the base, the latch of the doors hissing behind me. Yo! Ugly mug! I yelled at the alien animal, making its head snap in my direction. Yes! I'm talking to you! Shoo! From our base! Stomping loudly, I advanced. At it, and it hesitantly took a step back. I yelled some more insults, waving my hands in the air. It took another step back, then it stretched forward, neck extending like some bizarre worm. Nope, I thought, and turned on my makeshift violation of the Geneva Convention. The spray of fire made the alien let out a screech and flee into the forest, leaving me standing in the fast-falling snow to the knees. So, that was easy, I said to myself, and retreated into the base. It was cold. I could feel the shiver rattle, me as the adrenaline abated. Inside, two very stunned-looking friends were waiting for me. Fermi! Why? Zeph groaned, snapping the welding tool out of my hand. Why your human insanity lies in fire of all things. No, I don't wish to know how it occurred to you that this would work. I'm going to sleep. They harumphed, climbing back into their hammock. Nimar was still looking at me with very wide eyes and his ears dropped, shoulders shaking slightly. I winced, taking off my outside gear. Nim, are you all right? He squeaked, hearing me, hiding his face in his hands. Fermi! He finally whined, taking my hand and bringing it up to his chest. Tilting my head, I waited for him to maybe explain. Fermi. Yes, that is my name. I smiled, trying to reassure him. Would you like to sit down? You look a bit shaken. Nimar nodded and dragged me towards his sleeping niche, making me sit down there, and promptly wrapped us in one of his blankets. His eyes were very wide. Fermi, he muttered, leaning his forehead against my shoulder. That was stay? He finally said, fingers curling into my shirt. I hummed. Sure thing. Sorry for scaring you, Nim. Enjoy another mazazzing story. We had realized we had to stow away someone in the third month of the journey. It normally would be a problem, but if they managed to evade security for 3 months and never made any mess or excessive noise, we concluded it would be probably fine. Well, we weren't entirely wrong about this. The first time I managed to get a glimpse of our accidental passenger was when I was carrying some crates with equipment back to storage. It was just for a split second. 2 luminous eyes in the dim hallway. A bit of movement out of the corner of my eye. I startled, but they only skittered away, not paying much attention to me. They weren't violent or malevolent. Probably. Hopefully. The mechanic reported that someone organized the tools in the mech lab, unprompted, which was unheard of. The mech lab was a huge mess most of the time. The evidence we found around suggested that it was our stowaway. They even left a weird pictogram on the drawing board, high enough that a normal crew member would need the ladder to reach. Then, a lot of little things started happening around the ship. A cleaned room there, a fixed leak here, the board AI that giggled when faced with the question, where did the shiny new booster for the engine come from? Sick crew members swearing they saw somebody check up on them at night, singing softly until they fell asleep. It seemed like the weird creature that had hidden on our ship took a liking to us, enough to dote on us like a mother hen. We started calling them Helper. Helper gradually got less and less cautious when sneaking around the ship, sometimes allowing us to see them. Rumors spread that they were big, tall, with 2 eyes and long limbs, moving fluently like a shadow in the night. Every time I glimpsed them in a better light, a chill went down my spine. I knew logically that they were kind and nice, but my instincts always whispered to me that they were a danger. They seemed to like me a lot, though. Sometimes a soft chuckle reached me when I was rambling at the food crates, from above, high from under the ceiling. Nicely wrapped packets of rations. Somewhat appeared on my desk when I wasn't looking after a long stretch of work, too neat and precise to be made by anybody of the crew. At times at night I could hear soft creaking noises of the hallway floor groaning under the steps of someone heavy, and an eerie, softly sung lullaby echoing down the hallway in a tune I never heard from any culture. The scientists were excited at the prospect of having an accidental passenger of an unknown species on board. I was somewhat worried, to be honest. If they were from an undiscovered new species, how could we be sure that they had enough food that was actually healthy for them on board? One day, I was tinkering on a piece of the turbine, trying to get it to stop clicking at random intervals. The sound annoyed me to no end, and probably meant something was stuck in the fan. I growled when it jammed, a muffled curse escaping me. I felt like crying. The deep space depression caught me finally that week, and we had another half a year before we reached our destination. Over the sound of my hiccuping breath, I noticed the floor groan behind me, a gust of warm, lightly wet air hitting the back of my head, and I froze. The footsteps stopped and a deep, lilting voice sounded from just above my head. "Hey, need help with that?" Helper's accent was atrocious, their voice box barely managing to make the correct sounds, but they were still, unmistakably, speaking in my birth language. I yelped, jumping on the desk and turning, the screwdriver held defensively in my hand. My first proper chance to see them in full revealed things that had been better kept in the shadows. Helper looked wrong, like if somebody took a proper, normal person, stretched them out, and painted the thing that resulted from that in a weird clash of colors. Their eyes were too sharp, too bright, too light, their hands just a tad bit too spindly and sharp-edged, and they were big. Big enough that they needed to bend their head down, even in these high, airy rooms of the ship. I screeched in fright, squeezing my eyes shut. Helper made a soft, broken noise and skittered back, the floor groaning under them. "Shh, not be afraid. I not." They groaned, probably searching for the appropriate word. "I not hurt people." "Little people?" "Little people. You good?" "Not cry, please." The scratchy sound of their voice and the broken grammar nearly sent me into a bordering on hysterical, laughing fit, my sanity slowly but surely slipping away from me. "My name is Jahahir, not little people. Little people is in plural, too. It should be little person, if you want to be precise. I found myself saying on automatic, startling at the delicate trill of affirmation from Helper. Nice to meet ya here. My name is George. They introduced themselves, the foreign cluster of... Sounds at the end probably their name. I be one of the species human. We call us human. You call you? They asked, curious. Ah, we are the Habilta. Nice to meet you too. I risked a peek and relaxed, seeing them safely hidden by the shadows. A brilliant laugh came from the shadow where Helper hid themselves, a brief flash of white teeth and luminous eyes. Habilta. Good name. You look friend-like. You look like little creatures from home. Good creatures. Name fits. I like you. You helped me, I help you. We discover space together. Good deal? They asked and left me standing on my desk, gaping at the shadows in stunned silence. Yeah, sounds reasonable, I managed to say, blinking intensely. Good. Now, need help with the machine? The eyes in the shadows blinked back at me. No, I think I'm good, I said weakly, jumping off of the desk. I go now then. If need, yell in storage. We'll come. The door opened a bit, and the spindly figure slipped out, leaving me with the jammed turbine and my heart threatening to jump out of my chest. Life on our ship changed a little from the moment Helper George decided that they should reveal themselves, or, should I say himself, for he was pretty quick to clear that up. We managed to get him into medbay for an examination. Researcher Kikink nearly pissed himself with joy and fear seeing such a specimen. But alas, this resulted in half the crew gaping at the results for hours, buzzing excitedly, while Helper laughed at them from the shadow under the ceiling. Apparently he was nearly invulnerable by half the galactic standards and could eat anything organic if it wasn't full of toxic substances, to the point where anybody else would die just from sniffing it. Go figure that the nice horror from the fairy tales would be a death worlder, but of course, our species came from a death world too. But home was just a Class 2 death world, and not a fucking Class 4. Anyway, after concluding a thorough medical check and interview, Helper George got a file as a crew member all for himself, and we cleaned a broom closet out for him to use as a cabin, because as much as we liked him, he still was supremely creepy to look at. The pure joy on his face when he got his own badge was a sight to behold. And life continued that way. We just gained a very nice, very disconcerting, and very strong friend. I'm not kidding when I say he is strong. He can move the cargo crates like it's nothing, laughing at us struggling to carry anything heavier than the small food storage ones. One day he got a brilliant idea and made himself a cloak with a hood, spacious enough that the edges of his body were completely blurred. This, turns out, was a stroke of pure genius. We finally could have him in the common spaces without it creeping everyone out of their skin, and made the meals much funnier. A tall, shadowed figure in a long, dark, flowing cloak, hood obscuring his face, sitting at the end of the table and surrounded by a colorful, chatty, and cheerful crowd that arrived him only to half his chest, slurping the hottest soup we had on board and complaining in a low, scratchy voice that it was so mild. How do you don't have anything more spicy, little people? What is this even? Yeah, it was supremely funny. Captain Finge loved to kidnap Helper for hours to play this weird tactical game that he had shown us, chess. Seeing as they were the only ones to actually comprehend what was going on that board, it wasn't really that weird. All was good and nice. Until one day we got attacked by pirates. I had done what everyone that was briefed what to do in these situations did and hid, making the ship seem deserted. We turned off the engines, extinguished the lights, and blended into the shadows. You need to know one thing about my species. We are supremely good at hiding with an ancestry tracing back to ambush predators. And so, the ship was empty and quiet when the gaggle of outlaws broke inside. Eerie even, only the faint glow of emergency chemical lights along the ceiling, casting long shadows from every corner. The tactic was to disconcert the pirates, and, hopefully, make them think the ship was haunted or cursed. Superstitious bunch? The pirates. It usually worked, and if not, we had blasters hidden in the vents. We just forgot one small, crucial detail. We forgot that we haven't briefed George. The good thing was that he is smart, freakishly so. He caught on what we wanted to do to the pirates, the mildly bad, or dare I say mostly entertaining thing, was that he apparently took it as his clue to play the part of resident horror creature. And he did it wonderfully. The attackers entered. Through a breach in the wall of the second storage, where we kept mostly spare pieces for the ship and other metal cargo. The crates there piled high, under the ceiling, and George was intimately familiar with climbing them. Oh, I had so much fun looking through the tapes afterwards. He had positioned himself that the light of a lamp that was flickering constantly, it resisted being fixed, framed his silhouette in such a way that his shadow would stop over the pirates, already huddling together with fear, and switched it on, earning a shrill scream of terror from the outlaws beneath him. He let the cloak swish back, throwing the hood off his head, and started laughing, eyes glowing eerily, teeth glistening white. The pirates froze, nearly pissing themselves with fright. George yelled something at them in his native language. Sharp, biting, making you want to claw at your ears and cry with the sound, and jumped one crate down, the cloak like a weird cloud of darkness behind him. He screamed at them some more, and the blurry video showed the pirates kneeling and praying for their lives. I think he had a fright blaster with him, one that made loud bangs and flashed bright when fired while not actually firing anything, because there was a series of loud booming sounds and the cameras went white, and when it stopped, there was no trace of the attackers, only some scrambling movement in the place where the ships connected. Helper read the situation correctly and got the hell out of there before the chamber would get depressurized and kill him. Needless to say, we were really proud of him after that, our beloved resident creepy guy. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think.